Michael Saylor is warning about something important. Soon, we could see many treasury companies using Bitcoin, and his company, MicroStrategy, will have a lot to do because more and more firms are entering this market. So he's saying that many companies will soon buy Bitcoin. What do you think about that? Is this happening faster than many people think? Or is it going to take a little longer? And not only that, what we're also seeing right now is that Michael Saylor, or rather MicroStrategy, is buying Bitcoin every day. And it's not just about them accumulating it, it's much, much bigger. Michael Saylor actually has insights into upcoming regulations, and it's being predicted that crypto will skyrocket in July, or rather mid to late July, and that Bitcoin will reach $150,000 per Bitcoin. We have to remember, a year ago there were only MicroStrategy, Semilar Scientific, and Metaplanet, companies that had implemented a Bitcoin strategy. And that was just a year ago. They said they would use Bitcoin as part of their financial strategy, and now there are already 70 companies doing this. And if this continues, it could be 700 companies next year, because one thing is certain, success sparks curiosity, and right now there's a lot of uncertainty in the economy. That leads companies to ask themselves, how can we provide more value to our shareholders? And of course that the stock price rises as well. And if we look at the top 15 companies from last year, Metaplanet, the Japanese company, is in first place. And that should spark some interest, shouldn't it? Besides, a lot of people are talking about the Overton window and what the US government is doing. They are supporting Bitcoin as a strategic reserve and digital currencies. One thing is certain, the US government is backing Bitcoin. And that makes people sit up and ask, what's going on with Bitcoin? And I think we're still at the beginning, but things are really starting to pick up speed. The acceleration is real. And what's alarming is that these treasury companies aren't stopping, these businesses aren't stopping their Bitcoin purchases. And that we're reducing the supply of Bitcoin faster than many people think. In 30 days, 27 public companies have bought Bitcoin. And I thought to myself, what if one company buys Bitcoin every day? And that was 2 weeks ago. Now, it's already 29 companies in the last 30 days that have bought Bitcoin. Other CEOs of major companies are also saying that soon thousands, maybe 700 publicly traded companies could own Bitcoin. And I think there's just so much confusion in the market right now about why MicroStrategy, for example, is investing so aggressively, buying Bitcoin the way it does, and why many other companies, like Metaplanet, appear the way they do. Metaplanet, if we look at the charts, has risen over 10,000% since they adopted Bitcoin. And that's kind of crazy when you think about it. But of course, not all treasury companies are the same. Not all companies are the same. What's interesting is that Semilar Scientific has only moved sideways since acquiring Bitcoin, and most interesting of all is GameStop, which has also only moved sideways since they announced or added Bitcoin to their balance sheet. So who knows if these treasury companies will become the altcoins of this cycle. And what we're seeing right now, at least at the time this video is being made, is that Bitcoin is only a few percentage points away from its all-time high, but Bitcoin miners are about 50% below their all-time high. That's why I want to urge a lot of caution again or point this out to you, because many people thought that the Bitcoin mining companies would simply be the biggest winners. Many people thought that these mining companies would be the ones to outperform Bitcoin in the bull market, meaning they would perform better than the price of Bitcoin itself. And many people probably invested a lot of money in them and ended up ruined. Because right now, we simply aren't seeing Bitcoin mining companies performing better than Bitcoin. And the major platforms are still far from their all-time highs. Marathon Digital is currently about 75% below its all-time high, so just be careful with what you're buying right now, and keep your Bitcoin and your cryptocurrencies offline. You'll find the link for that in the description below the video. And if you want to achieve financial freedom through Bitcoin and crypto, you'll also find the link below the video. Because one thing is certain, just because something is connected to Bitcoin doesn't mean it will outperform Bitcoin. Like for example, the Bitcoin mining companies. And what we're seeing even more right now, the altcoins are really not doing well at all. And to be honest, it could very well be that they won't perform well in the future either. Because there's currently a bigger problem that many people are overlooking. What if many large institutions don't invest in altcoins? What we're seeing instead right now, and this is either totally concerning or just plain ridiculous, is that altcoins are now buying into Bitcoin. Yes, you heard that right. Some of the biggest altcoins are actually starting to buy Bitcoin for their own reserves. And that's just totally crazy, isn't it? For years, these people have said, you know what? We're creating the new Bitcoin. Our project is the new Bitcoin. Bitcoin is useless, they've said. Bitcoin is boring. Bitcoin has no real use. Take Charles Hoskinson from Cardano as an example. He's always emphasized, but proof of stake is the revolution. Proof of work is bad for the environment. And do you know what they're doing now? We're seeing Charles Hoskinson proposing to buy $100 million worth of Bitcoin for Cardano. And that's just absolutely insane, isn't it? One of the biggest altcoins in the world wants to do that now. This is real. Polkadot is doing this too now, as far as I know. And that's another one of the top 10 altcoins. And we're simply seeing how all the major altcoins are making a slight turn right now, bit by bit shifting towards Bitcoin. And MicroStrategy is buying Bitcoin every day. But it's not just about collecting Bitcoin or buying Bitcoin, it's about much, much more. The whole thing is much bigger. Michael Saylor has insights into upcoming regulations which we've talked about, and it's being predicted that crypto will skyrocket in July and Bitcoin will reach $150,000 per Bitcoin. And here's the hidden truth that no one is telling you. MicroStrategy continues to aggressively buy large amounts of Bitcoin every day. At first glance, this may look like ordinary boring accumulation, but there's a deeper strategy behind it that isn't publicly known. Because Michael Saylor doesn't act like a typical investor, but rather like someone with insider knowledge. We need to understand this first and knows what's coming in the future. He buys Bitcoin as regularly as a government institution, not like a private player. So it seems as if he's preparing a platform for something much, much bigger behind the scenes. MicroStrategy is transforming into a structure that uses Bitcoin as a central financial element. And this isn't just a tactic for preserving value, but the foundation for a completely new business model. Michael Saylor is probably preparing for the introduction of central bank digital currencies in the background. He believes that private assets like Bitcoin will provide freedom in a system where money is completely controlled, which is exactly where we're heading. Because then, Bitcoin will be the only free asset, and in July, we might see the first signals for the introduction of a digital dollar. This means for us that while the market, the US Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, and the ETFs are being closely watched, the real change will begin with new forms of digital money. So Michael Saylor understands this and wants to be ahead of the curve before the rules change completely. Banks and financial firms are now starting to include Bitcoin in their portfolios. And they're doing this officially, for example, through ETFs. And it's no longer just individual funds or enthusiasts. This is a massive influx of capital from Wall Street into Bitcoin. The more money comes in officially, the lower the supply and the greater the upward pressure on the price. Michael Saylor isn't just accumulating Bitcoin, he's building a business model that others could follow. For example, we saw this with Metaplanet.
So, Strategies, the company's phone is always going to be ringing as new companies start up in this market. What sense are you getting about that? This is really accelerating at a much faster pace than people are thinking.
Atreus is already adapting. Really, that was just a year ago, right? They set up the Bitcoin treasury company strategy, and now we're seeing more companies follow suit. So if you extrapolate that out, that means that next year, right, we could potentially be at several hundred companies, right? And I think, look, significant success often breeds considerable interest. And we are currently at a particular time when there is just a substantial amount of uncertainty in the broader economic environment, which naturally causes many companies to thoughtfully ask themselves, how exactly do we effectively create enduring value for our esteemed shareholders? And if I go out and, today you say, let's look at the top 15 companies in the world. Stablecoin bills. We have an administration that's very supportive of Bitcoin. Wake up and say, hey, what is this Bitcoin thing? And I think in this room, there are probably 400 people interested.
MicroStrategy is becoming a role model for many other companies that want to hold reserves in Bitcoin. And as soon as the big players see that it works, a wave of imitation will come and capital will flow into Bitcoin. And when Bitcoin is established as an important component on company balance sheets, its price fluctuations will also decrease more and more. And that will make it even more attractive for many pension funds, state treasuries, and of course banks. That means prepare yourself now. The market will experience a self-reinforcing effect. More trust leads to more buyers, and that leads to greater stability. Bitcoin will no longer be seen or regarded merely as a risky investment and will directly compete with gold. Bitcoin's liquidity, or rather its liquidity and digital nature, will give it an advantage in the modern economy. And this will open up an entirely new kind of demand. Money that has never before been invested in cryptocurrencies will then flow into crypto, into Bitcoin. Then Bitcoin will become the center of a new digital economy that will change the rules of the game forever. Cryptocurrencies will become the foundation for all financial operations and technologies of the future. Of course, this refers to Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. The market will explode, and investors who get in now will have access to the biggest wave of profits in history, to the greatest transfer of wealth in history. And I advise you to take this seriously, not to stand on the sidelines and wait, but to start taking action now. Even small investments in Bitcoin can already become capital that will completely change your life and that of your family in the future. Because now, cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin are not just money, but the key to the new global financial reality that is already gaining momentum. And also remember to store your cryptocurrencies, your Bitcoin, offline and not on centralized exchanges. Click on the link in the description below the video to do this.